Disclaimer: this content is intended for mature audiences only. Viewer discretion is advised. It started on a quiet Sunday evening, the kind that makes you want to stay indoors, light a candle, and unwind. I had just gotten back from the mall, a little embarrassed yet amused at myself for buying something I wasn't sure I'd even wear, a soft, silky set of lingerie I picked up on impulse. Maybe it was curiosity, or maybe I just wanted to feel beautiful again after weeks of long, tiring days. The house was quiet, and I thought I was alone. That silence gave me confidence. I slipped into my room, locked the door halfway out of habit, and stood before the mirror. For a brief moment, I forgot the world, the laundry downstairs, the dishes in the sink, even the complicated family dynamics that had taken over our lives. It was just me, my reflection, and a sudden rush of self-conscious laughter at how silly it all felt. But then something shifted. A faint creak. A breath that wasn't mine. I turned slowly, and there he was. My stepson. Sitting quietly on the edge of the bed. Not saying a word. Just there. For a moment, neither of us moved. I froze where I stood, trying to make sense of what was happening. Had he knocked? Did I not hear? Was he trying to tell me something before I panicked? The air grew heavy with tension, a silence so thick it felt like time itself had paused. His eyes, calm, unreadable, didn't carry judgment, only confusion. Or maybe curiosity. I tried to find my voice, but the words stuck somewhere in my throat. My heart pounded so loudly that I could barely think. Should I shout? Should I laugh it off? Or should I pretend like nothing happened? That single moment stretched endlessly, and all the air in the room seemed to disappear. This wasn't just about being caught off guard, it was about everything unspoken between us. The strange closeness that had grown over time, the late-night talks in the kitchen, the way he sometimes looked at me when he thought I wasn't paying attention. Was this all just coincidence? Or was there something neither of us had been willing to admit? Before I could say anything, he stood up slowly, his gaze still locked on mine. I didn't mean to, he started, his voice low and uneasy. But before he could finish, I took a step back, my breath catching. That was when I realized this night would change everything. What would you have done if you were in my place? Would you confront him, or let the silence speak for itself? Tell me in the comments below. I really want to know how you would handle that kind of moment. Ever since that evening, I couldn't stop thinking about how he had just sat there. It wasn't the first time I noticed him lingering longer than he should, or catching my gaze in ways that made my stomach twist unexpectedly. He was only 21, and I had been his stepmom for 3 years, which should have made everything between us simple, clear boundaries, polite distance, and respect. But life rarely followed the rules we expected it to. I thought about how he had grown up. His father had been busy with work for most of his childhood, leaving me to step into a role I hadn't fully understood myself. I wasn't just a mother figure, I was a guide, a friend, someone who tried to make the house feel warm when the world outside felt cold. And somehow, along the way, our dynamic had shifted subtly, almost imperceptibly. Long conversations over coffee, small jokes no one else would understand, quiet support in moments he thought I wasn't paying attention, these things had built a connection that didn't fit neatly into any box. That night, sitting there in my bedroom, I realized just how blurred those lines had become. There was something in the way he looked at me, a mixture of admiration, hesitation, and something else I couldn't name. It made my heart race and my mind spin with questions. Did he see me differently now? Or had I imagined it all along? I found myself replaying the earlier moments in my mind, every subtle glance, every small touch, every time his hand had brushed mine by accident. It was like a puzzle I couldn't solve, pieces that didn't quite fit but felt significant all the same. And yet, I couldn't ignore the thrill that pulsed through me, a dangerous excitement that made me question everything I thought I knew about desire, connection, and what was appropriate. Days passed, and the tension never really left. I noticed him in quiet ways, the way he lingered at the door when I passed, the little smiles that seemed meant just for me, the casual touches that sent shivers I couldn't explain. And every time I caught myself thinking about him, a pang of guilt mixed with a thrill that left me dizzy. Was it wrong to feel drawn to him like this? Or was it simply the natural pull between two people who understood each other in ways no one else could? Even now, I still didn't know what he was thinking. Was he confused, curious, or something else entirely? The silence between us had grown heavy with meaning, and every shared glance carried the weight of unspoken emotions. I couldn't stop wondering what would happen if we ever crossed that invisible line, if we gave into the tension we both felt but neither dared to name. The tension didn't fade in the days that followed. If anything, it grew heavier, wrapped around us like a quiet storm no one could predict. I tried to act normal, going about my routine, making dinner, folding laundry, laughing at his jokes like nothing had shifted. But every glance, every accidental brush of our hands, seemed to carry weight, and I could see it in his eyes, the same hesitation, the same curiosity I felt myself. He had started staying up later at night, lingering in the living room with his laptop or headphones, but sometimes I'd catch him in the hallway, pausing, almost like he was debating whether to knock or walk away. The air between us was thick, unspoken, charged. I began noticing the little things more, how he laughed at my stories in a way that felt personal, how his voice softened when he spoke to me alone, the way he sometimes just watched me without saying anything. I tried to dismiss it as imagination, as overthinking, but my heart knew otherwise. Then there was his father. I could feel the tension building there too, though no one said anything. My stepson's closeness had always been subtle, almost protective, and lately, I wondered if his father had noticed the change in his behavior. It wasn't anything overt, but a few lingering looks, a brief pause in conversation when we were all in the same room, made me uneasy. Was I reading too much into it, or was everyone silently aware of a line we were all tiptoeing around? The subplots of our everyday life only added fuel to the tension. Simple things became charged with meaning, making dinner together, arguing over which movie to watch, or even sitting across from each other at the kitchen table. Every moment was a test of restraint, a delicate dance where one wrong move could shift everything. And yet, despite the conflict, there was an undeniable pull, a magnetic connection neither of us could deny, even if we tried. Sometimes I caught him staring at me when he thought I wasn't looking, and I'd feel a rush of something I couldn't name, excitement, fear, longing. It was intoxicating and terrifying at the same time. And I couldn't help but wonder, was he as conflicted as I was, or was he enjoying the tension in a way I wasn't ready to admit? I want to know what you think. Would you confront someone if you felt this kind of tension, or would you wait to see how things unfold? Comment below with your thoughts. Do you think we'll ever cross that invisible line, or will it stay unspoken forever? Days passed, but the tension in the house felt almost unbearable, like the air itself was charged and waiting for something to happen. Every small interaction between us carried weight. I noticed how he lingered longer than necessary when we passed each other in the hallway, how his smile seemed softer, more intimate, as if sharing a secret I wasn't supposed to understand yet. And I could feel it too, the way my pulse quickened when he was near, the subtle heat in my chest whenever our hands brushed by accident. That evening, the sky had darkened with heavy clouds, and the soft hum of rain outside made the house feel smaller, more enclosed. I was in my room, trying to focus on a book, but I could feel his presence even without seeing him. Then, I heard the faint sound of footsteps approaching, slow and deliberate. My heart jumped. I wasn't sure if I wanted to look up or pretend I hadn't noticed, but before I could decide, he appeared in the doorway. He didn't speak. He just leaned casually, almost lazily, but there was an intensity in his gaze that made it impossible to look away. I felt a mixture of curiosity, fear, and something deeper I wasn't ready to name. The silence stretched between us, thick and heavy, and every second felt like it could snap the fragile control we'd been trying to maintain. We started talking, carefully at first, about mundane things, school, work, weekend plans, but every sentence carried a double meaning. Every laugh, every glance, seemed charged with the tension neither of us dared to break. I could see it in the way his eyes lingered on my lips, the way his posture subtly shifted closer without actually moving. It was as if the room itself was conspiring, holding its breath, waiting for the inevitable moment when the line we'd both been dancing around would be crossed. Then came the small, almost accidental touch. Our hands brushed as I reached for a book on the nightstand, and the spark that shot through me was undeniable. We froze, neither of us moving, neither of us speaking. My mind raced, trying to justify, rationalize, understand what was happening, but my heart ignored all logic. It was reckless, intoxicating, and terrifying all at once. Outside, the rain had begun to fall harder, tapping insistently against the windows, mirroring the rapid beat of my pulse. I wondered if he felt the same tension, the same conflict, the same dangerous thrill. Was he waiting for me to make the first move, or was he struggling with his own impossible emotions? I need to know what you think. If you were in my shoes, would you take the risk, or would you step back? Comment below with your thoughts. Just when I thought the tension had reached its peak, the unexpected happened. The soft chime of the front door opening downstairs broke the fragile silence, and my heart sank. His father was home earlier than usual. I could feel the sudden shift in the room, a reminder that what had been building between us wasn't just forbidden, it was fragile, dangerous, and on the verge of being exposed. My stepson stiffened, his gaze flicking toward the door, and the intensity in his eyes shifted into something unreadable, a mixture of panic and calculation. We both froze for a moment, caught between desire and consequence. I could sense that he wanted to linger, wanted to stay in that charged space between us, but the reality of the house and his father's presence forced restraint. It was like the universe had added a new layer to the tension, one that made every heartbeat heavier and every glance more meaningful. I tried to distract myself, reaching for the book again, pretending to read, but I could feel him close behind me. His shoulder brushed mine ever so lightly, and the small, deliberate contact sent a jolt through me. I wondered if he was testing boundaries, or if he simply couldn't resist the magnetic pull we both felt. My mind raced with thoughts of what could happen, what should happen, and what might never be allowed. Then, without warning, his phone buzzed loudly on the nightstand. He picked it up, but instead of glancing down casually, his expression changed. Something in the message made his face tense, his lips pressing into a thin line. It's complicated, he muttered, more to himself than to me. I caught a glimpse of the screen, a text from someone I didn't know, someone outside of the fragile bubble we'd created in the house. The moment added another layer of intrigue, a sudden twist I hadn't expected. Was there someone else in his life I didn't know about? Or was this another test of boundaries, another reminder that life outside this room was chaotic, unpredictable, and capable of shattering what we had almost dared to explore? I felt my pulse quicken, my mind torn between curiosity and fear. We stayed silent for a few long seconds, the weight of unspoken possibilities pressing down on both of us. I wanted to ask, to understand, to reach for him and demand clarity, but the tension in the room made it impossible. Every glance, every subtle movement felt charged with meaning, and I realized that whatever happened next could completely change our relationship. I want to know what you think. If you were in my place, would you confront him about the mysterious message, or would you let it linger and see how things unfold? Comment your predictions below. The storm outside had grown louder, rain striking the windows with an urgency that mirrored my thoughts. Inside, the air felt electric, charged with forbidden attraction and unexpected complications. The quiet intimacy we'd been building now faced an unpredictable challenge, and neither of us could ignore the feeling that the next move, whether spoken or unspoken, would decide everything. The edge of the cliff was closer than ever, and the tension had never felt more unbearable. The tension that had been building for days finally broke in a way I hadn't anticipated. It was late at night, the storm outside still raging, and we were alone in the house again. The air felt heavy, electric, almost unbearable, as if it knew what was about to happen. I could see the conflict in his eyes, the struggle between desire and reason, between what we both felt and what we knew was complicated. I swallowed hard, trying to steady my racing heart, knowing this was the moment we'd both been avoiding. He took a step closer, his hand hesitating in midair before lightly brushing mine. That small contact sent a shiver down my spine, and I realized I could no longer deny the attraction that had been simmering between us. I can't stop thinking about this, he whispered, his voice low and unsteady. It wasn't just desire, it was longing, tension, and an unspoken need that neither of us had been able to face directly until now. I didn't step back. Instead, I let the silence stretch between us, letting the anticipation build. Every glance, every subtle movement felt amplified, like the world outside had disappeared and only the two of us existed in that room. Then he leaned in, and for the first time, we closed the distance we'd both been holding back from. It was brief, tender, and filled with more emotion than either of us could have anticipated. In that moment, all the unspoken words, all the tension, all the uncertainty seemed to melt away. Just as we allowed ourselves that closeness, the storm outside seemed to echo our emotions, the rain pounding harder against the windows, thunder rolling like the drumbeat of our hearts. It was intoxicating and terrifying, the perfect culmination of the conflict that had been quietly building for days. We stayed locked in that silent understanding, the complexity of our relationship unresolved but somehow accepted in that fleeting moment. Then, just when I thought the intensity had reached its peak, his phone buzzed again. This time, I could see the message clearly, from his father. My breath caught as I read it, "I'll be home late. Don't wait up. Trust you two to handle everything." My heart raced. I looked up at him, and the realization hit, his father had known, perhaps even understood, the tension that had been growing between us all along. A mix of shock, relief, and disbelief washed over me. The forbidden feeling was still there, but now it carried a strange sense of permission, as if the invisible line we'd feared had been acknowledged without words. We didn't speak, but our eyes met, filled with unspoken understanding, curiosity, and the thrill of the unexpected twist that neither of us had anticipated. The storm outside began to fade, leaving the room quiet, but the intensity between us remained. Everything had changed, yet nothing was fully resolved. And in that silence, I realized that our story had only just begun. The days that followed felt lighter, though the memory of that stormy night lingered in every glance and every shared smile. My stepson and I had navigated a path we hadn't dared to imagine, and while the tension between us had shifted, it now carried a new understanding, one built on honesty, subtle boundaries, and the undeniable connection we shared. Life at home felt different. It wasn't just about everyday routines anymore. There was a depth, a closeness that hadn't been there before, a quiet intimacy that allowed both of us to feel seen and understood without crossing dangerous lines. We began spending more time together in ways that were safe yet meaningful. Late-night conversations over tea, shared laughter in the kitchen, and small, supportive gestures became our way of exploring the bond that had grown between us. His father's subtle acknowledgement of our connection, without confrontation, without judgment, had removed some of the tension, leaving room for trust, respect, and curiosity to flourish. I realized that romance didn't always need to be dramatic or forbidden. Sometimes, it was the quiet, lingering moments that made it unforgettable. Though the storm had passed, the thrill of what we had shared lingered. It reminded me that relationships, no matter how unconventional, could thrive when honesty and emotional awareness guided them. The unanswered questions, the subtle glances, and the delicate balance of our dynamic now felt like the foundation of something lasting. We had learned to navigate emotions, to read each other's cues, and to appreciate the intensity of human connection without letting it tip into chaos. As I reflected on everything, I felt a sense of closure yet also anticipation for what was to come. Our story hadn't ended in tragedy or scandal, it had grown into something real, something both thrilling and tender. And in that quiet understanding, I realized that life was often about embracing complexity, cherishing intimacy, and finding beauty in moments others might overlook.